Thompson Productions.
Let this be a reminder to you all that this organization will not tolerate failure.
The side of the federal building has been blown off, Jesse.
I don't understand it 'cause you won't say yes, but you don't say no. Saying no, we shouldn't.
They believe they were part of a CIA project called MK Ultra.
I'm giving up on trying to sell you things that you ain't buying.
Just like a segment of society that is not living in reality.
In a certain sense, we're kinda a little bit more Israel's vassal state.
There are police chiefs facilitating prostitution networks.
Do you understand? It's all in your head. It's your move.
What up, everybody? Good morning. Welcome to the Morning Dump with Austin Picard from the Underclass Podcast. Man, I hope all is well with you guys this morning. What's up, Marty McFly, Scott Mack? Greetings and salutations from Southern Michigan, he says. PG morning, what's up? JMS. All right, so it looks like we've had very extreme escalations occur within basically every single various geopolitical theater of war that seems to fall within, obviously, this Middle Eastern wider regional conflict that obviously pairs seamlessly with Israeli national interests, obviously. But yeah, it's what's up, King David? It is it's a little disturbing to witness what is. I do need some coffee, brother. I just grabbed some actually, so I haven't had one sip yet, and I just said, "Fuck it, we'll do it live." So here I am. But it looks like beyond this sort of major escalation, at least post ceasefire, there's also I have found something, I guess, that I can start with that would be a kind of a more casual introduction, which is I found it hilarious that there was this video that was circulating surrounding Elon, kind of portraying this, when he went on Rogan, he was talking about this concept called suicidal empathy. And man, it was on its face very, very easy to laughably dismiss, if only because now, of course, there's a legitimate point to the fact that on the left, I think, through the exploitation of various techniques that they've sophisticated over time through let's say the agenda of cultural Marxism, I think that's very much affected, the level of empathy, but in a negative direction, right? It's not really the conceptual outcome has very much shifted into a negative place, into a very much a negative direction. And I think that was by design. It was to kind of manipulate our ability to truly, naturally, genuinely empathize and share sympathy with others. And so, yeah, I think that something is at play here with this narrative, especially when in the very same breath, he's mentioning it in the terms of Gad Saad coming up with this very concept. And awesome, man. Thank you. Daniel McLaughlin says, "What's up, brother?" By the way, he says, Clint gave me a nice compliment on Dangerous Retards the other day, which if you aren't watching, obviously, Dangerous Retards, go check it out. It's Raven, Top, and Clint Russell, Top Lobster, David L. Corbo, right? And they are just murdering it, as always, doing the Lord's work, trying to shed some light on a lot of these dark crevices of sadistic, I would say, much more in line with kind of the spiritual demoralization and targeting of. But dangerous retard seems to be a very special concept. I think it's actually a, a great idea. So go check out that show for sure. I appreciate the shout out though. Um, empathy for the elites is certainly suicidal equals Trumpism. Man, it was funny to me because, like I said, for Elon to bring this concept up on this platform and then use Gad Sad as kind of the brilliant philosophical uh, right mind that discovered this concept. This was kind of the framework of it, which I've heard that, Gad Sad kind of put on this pedestal many different times. But you discover, of course, very quickly, and this is something that William Ramsey brought to my attention, which is the fact that Gad Sad admitted to being a Mossad agent. So that is another very interesting connection when you consider how these spooks deal in deception and just consistently attempt to manufacture consent, as we can obviously discuss on a daily basis, basically. But McLaughlin says he was talking about his debate against Destiny back in the day, the Ukraine war. You need facts and dates and insane specific autism. You need Scott Horton or Austin Picard. So hell yeah, man, that is beautiful. That makes me feel great. Thank you for letting me know. I have to check it out because I'm not up to date on their latest episodes. But I know that anytime I hear anyone kind of, at the very least, shining a light on my work to any real level, um, I am nothing but grateful. I am overwhelmingly, forever grateful. Just for there's very good people that it seems we've been able to surround ourselves with in this community, and as much infighting as there seems to be, um, yeah, I still think that, man, it's a lot better than a lot of these other alternative groups of like-minded individuals, right? But let's see. Austin, I saw you this weekend. At first, I wasn't sure, but then I saw your honk if you love Israel bumper sticker and was like, oh, yeah, that's my boy. Wow, Jerry. How dare you say this to me, man? That's so funny. But honestly, it's that was the funniest segment the other day, honestly. But really, I think it's funny because I went on whatever this is with Sam Tripoli last night, and we were discussing just kind of like, again, this wider regional escalation in a way, but also just Israel, of course, comes up, and we were discussing kind of obviously how the Jewish mob seems to very much have a strong, um, not so hidden hand at this point, but very much an obvious footprint in regard to kind of the path of modern civilization in recent history, and so not exclusive to the Jewish mob, but they're very much a primary organization involved in a lot of this. I would say what we would consider to be the deep state. It would be one of the key components within, and so yeah, it's very. I think it's important to for sure acknowledge the fact that you can kind of draw this through line, through all these historical events that basically, I mean, you can trace the Jewish mob ties to not only Epstein, right, but you can trace it to Roy Cohn, right, to so all of these a lot of this very well established sexual blackmail, as far as in modern day, the very well established networks seem to have been essentially propped up by this very well hidden hand. But it's strange because, again, as it's been very much spotlighted recently, of course, they have this direct tie-in with the JFK assassination, and so you just have, again, this through line you can draw into modern day, where you see these interests playing out and these very special interests that seem to implicate the usual suspects, and so yeah. Anyway, it's I think it's one of the most important things to, of course, attempt to identify these reappearing, resurfacing individuals who are a part of these groups and networks of, powerful influence, that very much seem to function as a secret society. I think a lot of these groups. So yeah, anyway, it's an interesting conversation to attempt to have, but I think we should begin basically by bringing up that clip because um that, along with a couple of other instances where this notion of suicidal empathy has kind of surfaced. It's kind of strange, especially considering just the recent messaging surrounding this concept, which also falls perfectly in place with the justification of a lot of this, a lot of these military conflicts that are playing out at this very moment. As well as, of course, the consistent, you know, attempted target of manufactured consent as well, obviously. So let's hear what old Elon has to say about suicidal empathy.
There's a guy who posts on X who's great, Saad, and he talks about basically suicidal empathy.
Mm-hmm.
Like if there's so much empathy that you actually suicide yourself.
Yeah.
So that we've got civilizational suicidal empathy going on, and it's like I believe in empathy. Like I think you should care about other people, but you need to have empathy for civilization as a whole, and not commit to a civilizational suicide.
Also, don't let someone use your empathy against you so they can completely control your state and then do an insanely bad job of managing it and never get removed.
The fundamental weakness of Western civilization is empathy. The empathy exploit. They're exploiting a bug in Western civilization, which is the empathy response. I think empathy is good, but you need to think it through and not just be programmed like a robot.
Right. Understand when empathy has been actually used as a tool.
Yes. Like it's weaponized empathy is the issue.
Weaponized empathy. That is very, very interesting because look what a strange pivot that Elon makes here in regard to his concept of empathy. But still, it goes without saying that it has been exploited. Obviously these sort of core moral values that have been very much, I would say the vast majority seem to have not very outlined those core values for themselves. So they're very easily manipulated when it comes down to, a lot of this. They seem to, these mind manipulators, they prey upon these vulnerabilities, these weaknesses in our psychology. And I think understanding that, this level of sympathy they can easily exploit, right? And especially if you don't have quite the, the I would say just the detailed, the exposure to the level of detail necessary to kind of conceptualize a lot of this for yourself, to where you don't quite run a similar risk in that way psychologically. So it's a sad thing to witness, but again, they are very much targeting and exploiting this inability to think within this nuanced framework, this ability to just psychologically approach these issues with a nuanced mindset and approach in general. And so again, we've been witnessing this ideological subversion within this sort of exact same context, leveraging these unfortunate over emotional reactionary individuals who are very kind of at this low level of frequency, not quite interpreting the news cycle in a sufficient manner. Yeah, it's a slippery slope that you find yourself on at that point. And it takes a lot of discipline and effort to get out of that cycle. It's a doom cycle. Yeah, definitely. It's part of MK Ultra. It's mind control on repeat. Remember John McAfee, 100%. All right, let's see the next clip on Elon's suicidal empathy.
Yeah, I mean, it's really come as quite a shock to me that there is this level of really hatred and violence from the left. I always thought the left, or Democrats, were supposed to be the party of empathy, the party of caring, and yet they're burning down cars, they're firebombing dealerships, they're firing bullets into dealerships. They're
Dude, this volume on this
Teslas.
clip is low.
Tesla is a peaceful company. We've never done anything harmful. I've never done anything harmful. I've only done productive things. So I think we just have a deranged. There's some kind of mental illness thing going on here, because this doesn't make any sense.
Yeah,
and I think there are larger forces at work as well. I mean, I don't know who's funding it and who's coordinating it, because this is crazy. I've never seen anything like this.
It is interesting to consider that concept, of course, because once again, we already are well aware of the just the destabilization methods of kind of the George Soros funded color revolutions, and and then of course that coming home to the U.S. during the George Soros funded BLM riots, which this is it's all within the same context of Gladio strategically, in my mind, how it's a process, a very well established system of destabilization, and I think that, of course, that includes false flags and mass shootings and bombings domestically, and maybe staging domestic terrorism on even some sort of a Tesla dealership. No, honestly, I do believe that there's definitely a genuine reaction to Elon being this close to the Trump administration, having so much of kind of a heavy footprint on just the direction that the administration is taking. That alone, you're obviously witnessing a huge public reaction, especially on the left, where, as always, there's an overreaction, and they're kind of crucifying the false prophets and the puppets, right? The political puppets, and they're not really addressing the overarching sinister agenda that's playing out, and that's where you have this kind of inability to kind of recognize, as the pendulum swings, we remain on this common path. The ultimate goal remains the same. And so we consistently, problem overreaction solution, 100%, man. Lance Ripa, you're absolutely correct on that, my friend. I mean, problem reaction solution is the name of the game, and the game is rigged in their favor. And understanding that going in is, I think, of the utmost importance, and should be a priority. That way you can, if only, you could, as we talk about so very often, just try to cultivate that defense mechanism for yourself, so that no longer takes place in regard to the manipulation, the malleable mind. And so let's listen to him at CPAC as well, because it's just, again, reinforcing exactly what I'm discussing here. And then we'll play the hilarious clip of Gad Saad admitting and acknowledging his role as a Mossad agent, which is the craziest thing ever, because once really, it's not shocking, but the level of I found it hilarious, the context of him being asked in the first place, because he felt as if that should have been the number one takeaway from his book, was that he thought everyone would be shouting from the rooftops and running with these headlines that Gad Saad is admittedly a Mossad agent, and so that alone I felt was hilarious. But then he takes this extraordinary, kind of, it's ridiculous, because what he inevitably reveals is that he was essentially kind of tested, right? God, dude, what is happening? X just keeps fucking with our stream, guys. So every single time I do a stream, apparently we're just gonna have technical issues. But hey, It's all good. What up, Jose's in the chat? Oh shit. Hit the like button, homos. All right. We got definitely share, subscribe. You know this. Go support No Way Jose's channel. Go support the Underclass channel. Jose the Bioform. We got another Jose. Uh-oh. Did you guys see Trump is undergoing a conversion? Speaking of Mossad. That's so funny. Is he converting to Judaism? Is that what you're telling me? We already know he wears the little hat. Gad Saad being an Israeli asset makes so much sense now when you look at his message. 100%, brother. I mean, this guy is tasked with obviously manufacturing consent in regard to the genocidal agenda playing out, which you can witness. All you have to do is stay plugged in, remain in the loop, and this is modern day genocide, man. As much as people don't like to use this terminology, it's it's really something extraordinary is playing out on the world stage in front of our very own eyes. And man, it's unfortunate, but we're living in very unique, extraordinary times. I'll be honest, this is some historical shit. But let's see. Oh, we got Sloppy Toppy. What up, brother? I know shit, Phil. I was targeted for MK Ultra right around the time of the Trump assassination. I'm a prior Marine with listed mental issues. I live 30 minutes from Butler. Dude didn't talk to me after. Very interesting. Hey, you should hit me up, brother. Hit me up at some point if you have anything extra you would like to add to that story. We could bring it to the table, maybe if you were interested. But yeah. Anyway, let's listen into which this is very strange to see. Like I understand what he said was more of a layered message on Rogan's as far as just at least the attempted explanation. Of course, you have to have some sort of empathy, or you're a sociopath, obviously. But I also found it hilarious that he mentioned being programmed like a robot, which was very strange. But anyway, let's check in on our boy at CPAC.
For the people dying at the front lines. That's the most important thing. How many more years? I think we should have empathy for the people dying at the front lines. That's the most important thing. How many more years is this supposed to go on?
Yeah.
And imagine if that was your son, your father. What are they dying for?
Yeah.
What exactly are they dying for? That line the line of engagement has barely moved for 2 years.
Yeah.
There's a whole bunch of people dead in trenches for what? And I'll tell you what for what. It's like for the biggest graft machine that I've ever seen in my life. That's for what. It's unreal. Like the amount of money that is being taken in graft and bribery is disgusting. And so what's actually happening is that those people, those poor guys are getting sent into a meat grinder for money. That's what's actually going on.
Yeah.
And it needs to stop. They need to stop dying.
Yeah.
And the grift machine's got to stop, So, and I think people that don't. A lot of people out there don't realize, like, the president has a lot of empathy. He really cares.
Yeah.
He's a good. He's a good man.
Yeah. So, I guess you can simultaneously be a good man, but also greenlight a genocide at the very exact same time, and have some sort of I don't know, what would you call it? It's definitely no real moral foundation that you could rely on, in my mind, that would allow such a kind of hypocrisy morally to play out. But let's see. There were a couple other things that I wanted to show you guys in regard to this. One last clip with Gad Saad finally admitting, right? This is the funniest clip ever, by the way. Once again, it's I never in your right mind would you imagine that it's just so willingly acknowledging something of this nature is I don't know, you would think it would be the antithesis of what a spook would do. but at least the opposite of how you would conduct yourself. But it very much seems as if a lot of these individuals are overly confident, and they really would love for the public, at least, it's kind of like that David Gletty phenomena that I witnessed whenever Jose, whenever Jose and Ken had him on, because it was like he was so proud of his lifestyle, and when he was, an asset for the feds, and it's just like, that's very foreign psychologically for me. It's difficult to conceptualize that, but let's see how giddy old Gad is so proud of his past experience in espionage with the Mossad. And yeah, by the way, Sloppy Toppy, you can email me, austinwadepicard@gmail.com. You can just DM me. I mean, whatever. There's plenty of ways to get in touch with me. If you just I don't know if you follow me on Twitter or Instagram, but that's probably the best way. But yeah, you can email me as well. So, but let's see. Rise to Liberty. What's up, Jacob? It's got to be some weird sort of patriotism, right? Military service is mandatory over there. Hey, yeah. That's an interesting justification. But yeah, I get what you're saying. But it's hilarious how, it's never ending, just witnessing and it would be strange. I wonder how many people, especially, and considering Udo Olfkott, who I discussed recently, this German journalist who revealed the fact that obviously Mockingbird never ended. The CIA has a very well established policy of buying journalists, buying the news, providing scripts to publications, verbatim, word for word. There's a reason that you can grab all those hilarious super clips that have all of these different publications and media assets within these publications running with the exact same script verbatim. It's really kind of, you would think there would be some sort of attempt to mask this level of manipulation in the media, but who's paying attention? I think that's a part of it. It's like, the level of deception has really been extraordinary as far as what has been what has been achieved, and so let's see here. Old Gad said, this is but I would wonder, Jacob, what how many of these individuals, especially considering what they could provide, as far as especially someone like Gad Saad. I mean, he's obviously he would be a very good media asset, and especially he considers, he even mentions the fact that he speaks fluent Arabic and could pass, right, as essentially like a Lebanese Arab, something of that to that effect, and so he could infiltrate higher levels of government, things of that nature, right? So, good morning. What up, Abrogate D's? He says, good morning, Austin and fellow schizo retards. All right, let's listen to the Mossad agent.
So I kind of couldn't believe it in the book. You let the cat out of the bag. You're actually a Mossad agent.
Oh, you are the first person on my media tour to actually either have read that far into the book or to mention it. I thought it would be the top story in every show.
This is serious. This is serious stuff. And most people, they're not as candid about this stuff.
I thought that maybe I had extended the statute of limitation, that they won't come after me at this point. Do you want me to tell that story?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So that actually is something that I discuss in the chapter on play, the importance of living your life with a playful mindset. Now you might say, how does the Mossad fit with play? Well, so when I was about 18 years old, I had a cousin who had come from Israel, who said, hey, I have a friend of mine who would like to meet you, to chat with you. I'm thinking, for what purpose? So, he'll talk to you. So I meet this gentleman. He says, oh, there are some guys who would like to meet you and see if you're interested in working with them. And so I meet these gentlemen who don't introduce themselves as being Mossad agents or whatever. They say, "Oh, we're interested in checking the quality of our security in various environments. Would you be interested in being the person who does some of these tests for us?" I said, "Okay, tell me more." So the first mission that I went on was I was asked to go to an El Al office in downtown Montreal, walk in there. Everything was scripted. They told me exactly what to do. Walk in with a bag, ask some questions, then take the bag, leave it there, and end up leaving without taking the bag.
Did you actually look in the bag before
I
you
did not
dropped
look
it?
in the bag. I'd like
Very
to think that
trusting of you.
there weren't any bombs.
What?
So I did that. And
Why
then
would that?
a security person
There
came,
weren't
"Oh, you
any
forgot your
bombs.
bag," and so on. So the test was done successfully. I don't remember exactly how long after. A couple of weeks later, they asked to meet me again. They said, "We have a more challenging
Dude,
mission
this
for you.
specifically.
You are now a student at I think it was University of Montreal." It's a fake story.
It's a fake story, guys. No, this didn't actually happen. All right, he's being tested by the Mossad. He would never, he would never actually pose as a student, like Operation Chaos or anything, like bringing back Colston Westbrook, Jacob, right? uh, and tasking him to set up a pipeline to the nearby MK Ultra medical facility where you have Donald Cinque DeFreeze. That way, I don't know, some sort of student at UC Berkeley could then potentially be caught up in that very pipeline named Patty Hearst, right? So it's like it's the funniest thing of all time. You have this Phoenix operative tasked with coming back home domestically and becoming a professor. Right? So you have a CIA agent who legitimately posed as a professor and set up a pipeline that Patty Hearst was then caught up in. And yet people are still under the impression that by the way, I saw when the JFK files were were like very much, kind of the number one thing being discussed, I would say, at the time, seemingly. I saw what's her name, damn it. I'm trying to remember now. She's brilliant. She actually wrote the anyway, it doesn't matter. I'll pull her name up in a minute, but she basically she tweeted about the same concept, just kind of mentioning the fact that hey, we have reinforcing examples of how the CIA very much had a policy of utilizing fake students or actual assets or agents posing as students, and this was a very well-established policy. So, not at all surprised that Mossad conducts their business in the very exact same way. Again, I personally feel like there's no real. I've said this before, but in terms of intelligence, there's no real distinction. They all seem to very much, especially if you consider MI6, Mossad, and CIA, they're so similar in their benchmarks and agendas. In my mind, they conduct themselves in an almost identical way.
That they're asking me to play a role. You're working on a paper, whatever, Israeli-Palestinian conflict. You'd like to interview the Israeli consul in Montreal. And what we're going to do is in your glove, Montreal is a very cold place. In your gloves, there's going to be a fake gun. And the idea is to then see if they catch. Now, this one was a lot more elaborate in that there were multiple layers of security. And in the final layer, if I can get through all of the different things, there would be a very detailed pat down. And I remember telling them, but what if he finds the gun, the fake gun? I said, don't worry, we're behind this. Like it's secure. And so I go through all the stages.
What?
The guy, and I noticed that he's getting stressed. They ask him to stop. Now they're very happy because they're, in a sense, I mean, I don't have confirmation of this, but I think it was 2 tests that were happening. Test 1 is literally the security. Test 2 is this guy someone that is worthy to keep working with him? Because, and again, I'm speculating here, but I think it's on solid ground. I'm kind of the dream of the Mossad and associated
The
agencies, because
dream of the
I'm the
Mossad.
Lebanese Jew who's a perfect Arabic speaker who left Lebanon. The most famous case of in the Israeli spy game is someone named Eli Cohen, who was
Yep.
executed by the Syrians, having infiltrated the highest ranks of Syrian society, who, because he was a perfect Arabic speaker, was able to infiltrate the high society of Syria. And so I can't know for sure that that's where I was heading, but it certainly seemed as though they were testing me. And then there was a third mission, which apparently I was told I shouldn't speak too much about it based on the legal review of my book from my publisher, but where I was going to go on a third mission that kind of raised the stakes of what I was being tested on. And as I tell in the book, what ended it is something that the Mossad is apparently very afraid of, and that's the angry Jewish mother. And so apparently my mother found out.
No
And
way.
the only way that she could have found out, by the way, because I never told anybody. I didn't even tell anybody these stories for something like 25 years after the fact. It might have well been my now wife who first, maybe I was trying to impress her when we were going out on our first courtship dating. And so I think it must have been my cousin who would have told her, because there's no other way that there would have been a leak, that must have said, oh, Gad is doing really well. He's working well with these guys, whatever. And then she ended up saying, this has to end. She was going to blow it in the open. These guys don't really like to have a lot of attention. And so that was the end of my Israeli spy game career.
Very, very interesting, Gad. I think that is very much worth acknowledging, because anyone who would be willing to admit that much, I would imagine, potentially is guilty of much more. So partially that makes sense. On the other hand, that sounds like complete bullshit. Yeah, 100%. I know. It's hard to judge and gauge exactly what he is potentially telling the truth about, but I'm very much under the impression that he's, at the very least, he's a compromised asset, so not at all surprised. You consider his messaging, it's an attempt to provide justification for this current conflict playing out on the world stage. I mean, that's a lot of what he's attempted to accomplish in my mind, and he's done a damn good job in many ways. I think convincing a lot of people that some of this is worthwhile and supporting and defending, and that's why I think it's yeah. Again, you can't trust Mossad, anyone, even if they're. Could you imagine making that story up as well? Like, which is, I don't know which one's worse, to be honest, at this point. But yeah. So another point worthwhile is apparently there was a targeted assassination on a correspondent from Al Jazeera, and his name's Hassam Shabat, who apparently he's been documenting atrocities in northern Gaza throughout the genocide. And it looks like Israel assassinated Palestine Today journalist Mohammed Mansour as well an hour prior to this other correspondent. So Israel is flat out murdering journalists so it can exterminate Gaza in total silence, according to Dan Cohen. And I think that there couldn't be anything said that's probably more accurate in this context. So anyway, beyond that, let's kind of pivot toward at least a little bit of an update in regard to some of these escalations that have been playing out. And by the way, one aside briefly. So the Maui police chief, apparently the county's police commission unanimously voted to defend him and so he will not be placed on administrative leave. The individual who is allegedly, put forward and alleged to be a co-conspirator in the Diddy case, and also, of course, was the official who ordered victims to be trapped during the Lahaina fire in Maui, and also was the incident commander during the Vegas shooting. So, not surprised he's being protected. Also, wouldn't be surprised if somehow he ended up dead right at a certain point if this goes much further. But I would imagine that the fix is in, the cover up is very well in place. But you have, by the way, there's an update on the Epstein files I found kind of strange, which Attorney General Pam Bondi, she gave an update, and she claims that the Epstein files, after reports that 1,000 FBI agents were working on redactions for national security reasons, and she reveals there are tens of thousands of pages of documents and hundreds of child victims, obviously, and that the FBI is working around the clock under orders from her, Kash Patel, and Dan Bongino to ensure the files are released. Okay, so she confirms redactions will be minimal, only to protect the victims. So again, it's like we're getting a recycled narrative. It seems like ridiculous smoke and mirrors. Another example of false transparency. So yeah, I don't really buy this. Again, it's like, of course, you're going to see the redactions in regard to anyone who would be implicated, who is empowered at this very moment in time. And I think that's the main reason why, if you were going to provide this, right, throw a bone to the public, it would have been the JFK files, due to the controlled release and the ability to kind of stave off any real accountability in the first place because of the distance between the crime. It's just like at a certain point, when the individuals who would be held accountable are all long dead, then what are we actually achieving here? And so, I mean, I understand it is very important and valuable that some of this is reinforced as far as some of these narratives that are implicating, the hidden hand behind the assassination and things of that nature. But still, it's like the vast majority of, there's nothing really new for the most part that is essentially a bombshell smoking gun. So yeah, that's kind of my interpretation of this, is that we aren't getting the Epstein files because, of course, it implicates very many prominent individuals in the current administration as it stands today, which not at all shocked, and we should already know this, which is also another reason why you would put these compromised assets in place to, control the limited hangout, right? So yeah, anyway, let's see. There was what I feel like we should pivot to begin with here is, first of all, there was an Israeli startup that, before we kind of finish up a few notes on some foreign policy, there was this Israeli startup. There was a Wall Street Journal article which was instantly paywalled. So I had to take some screenshots of this one, but it basically explains how an Israeli startup inked the largest cybersecurity deal ever. And it talks about a group of former Israeli military officers who stand to make billions from Google's $32 billion purchase of this startup. I'll present the article from my screenshots in my email here. So it looks as if the key points, obviously, Google struck deal to buy cybersecurity company Wiz for $32 billion, the largest cybersecurity deal ever. Wiz's founders, former members of the Israeli Defense Forces Unit 8200, will each make over $3 billion from the sale, according to people familiar with the matter. Google aims to enhance its cybersecurity capabilities with Wiz's technology amid growing threats and the rise of generative AI. When Google's talks to buy cybersecurity company Wiz fell apart last summer, the startup's founder told staff he was aiming for an initial public offering. Less than a year later, the company inked the largest cybersecurity deal ever. Wiz struck a $32 billion deal to sell the company to Google parent Alphabet. Oh no. Another CIA intelligence connected cutout. Man, very, very strange how the entire it seems as if you go back to my DARPA episode where it was the DARPA LifeLog project that I was covering, but then it inevitably led me down this path of total information awareness and this essentially this policy of manufacturing these social media platforms is really it seems as if it's a digital gulag put in place for one to not only of course achieve mind manipulation and place us in a digital gulag, right? Prisoners of an algorithm, essentially. It's more than that. They're encouraging us. They're really deceiving us from its infancy. Inherently, the deception was to encourage you to provide your most personal information publicly that you wouldn't otherwise be willing to. And so there was the birth of of Facebook, right? And DARPA's LifeLog project, which again, it's like, how can we encourage individuals to offer up pictures of, their most, let's say, just personal moments, private moments, and that is very efficiently taking place. But so on Tuesday, reviving a marriage that could bolster the tech giant's cyber muscle, the highly competitive business of selling cloud services has grown in complexity, particularly as generative AI advances, prompting companies like Google to beef up their security to defend against hacks and other threats. Asaf Rappaport and his co-founders now stand to make more than $3 billion each from the sale, according to people familiar with the matter. It is the biggest sale for a private venture-backed company on record, displacing Meta Platforms' $19 billion acquisition of WhatsApp in 2014. They are among the alumni of Unit 8200, part of the Israel Defense Forces known for its cybersecurity savvy and intensity. Former Unit 8200 members have been able to attract clients and investment money from Silicon Valley in spades, and the Wiz team is now among the ranks of unit veterans that have founded highly valued cybersecurity companies such as Palo Alto Networks and Fireblocks. They sold it to us as if it was going to be fun, which is how they are going to sell us CBDCs. It's all NWO nonsense. You're right, brother. 100%. I put it in the terms of, how did I explain it? I said, imagine a world where the people have been conditioned to facilitate their own oppression. An Orwellian society where the trap of convenience has been convincingly laid only to usher in the all-powerful totalitarian technocratic state. A discouraging prospective version of reality describing the largest open-air prison in human history, where the shackles of enslavement have been restructured, modernized, and digitized. As Aldous Huxley once said in Brave New World, most men and women will grow up to love their servitude and will never dream of revolution. It's time we defiantly reject our prior programming and revolt against the tyrannical nature of the mass surveillance state, with the primary goal of unmasking the covert agenda clearly pursued by the most prominent big tech companies in Silicon Valley. And that's exactly, you witness this information war by exposing these significant overlaps between the highest levels of military intelligence and the elite controllers in Silicon Valley. It's obviously clear that this emerging system and technologies over the years have almost always been a direct result of military applications. So in no way right? I mean, when you witness the dystopian vision playing out before our eyes, the implications are all pervasive, pointing to these inextricable connections between U.S. military-industrial complex and modern-day social media platforms, as well as search engines being weaponized as a mechanism to fight a global information war. And that's I mean, consider what I mean, just the implication of controlling the, the search engine, right? Controlling and operating undoubtedly the largest and most used search engine in the world since the rollout of the internet. I mean, it's what could you do then? Perception becomes reality. And all you would have to do is carefully curate these search results. And you would overwhelmingly successfully convince the vast majority of this current paradigm. And that's by design. They're intended to embrace this enthusiastically. And I, for one, I'm dragging my feet in every way. I refuse to, be complicit. At least is my mind. I refuse to be complicit in this agenda. And so, at every point I have the ability to resist, I will do my best. But it's difficult. I don't know how we've kind of been seduced into this trance-like state, just kind of overwhelmingly embracing the next pivot toward the tiptoe toward totalitarianism. And until we kind of wake up to this and discover alternative systems, it's really the only way. And realizing that individuals who are allegedly responsible for cultivating those very alternative systems that could provide a viable solution, you discover that they're also compromised. You look at like the CEO of Rumble. I mean, he's a Peter Thiel acolyte. He's been compromised. He was brought into the fold. So do we have an alternative to YouTube? It's like we were being convinced so very often that these as if there are these genuinely organic organizations that come to prominence with our best interest at heart. And I have yet to actually witness that to be the case. So let's finish this. Rappaport, a 41-year-old Tel Aviv native, often dons a hoodie with Wiz's logo on it, in keeping with tech aesthetic, or a white t-shirt, joggers, and sneakers. His shoes from the luxury Italian brand Golden Goose typically cost more than $500. He often brought his border collie, Mika, dubbed Wiz's chief dog officer, to work at the company's offices in New York and Tel Aviv, and encouraged other employees to bring their dogs as well. Mika, who died late last year, had her own LinkedIn page. Rappaport wrote that when the dog died that they were a powerful couple and called the dog the love of his life. Interesting. After the talks between Google and Wiz fizzled last summer, Wiz started talking to bankers again in the fall about a fresh deal. A paucity of initial public offerings this year prompted Rappaport and co-founders Amy Lutwick, Yinyan Kostika, and Roy Resnick to explore deal conversations with several other parties, according to people familiar with the matter. None was willing to pay up as much as Google. The companies were ultimately able to improve the terms of the deal, including a more than $3 billion termination fee for Wiz should the agreement fall apart, and gain confidence that the Google transaction could overcome regulatory hurdles. The people familiar with the deal said. Google also views the Wiz deal as something that is in the best interests of America's national security. The increased role of AI and adoption of cloud services have dramatically changed the security landscape for customers. The acquisition is likely to test the Trump administration's antitrust appetite, but if it clears, Wiz's security features could help Google attract more cloud customers. competition is stiff. Man, and how does this not instantly remind you of the Promise Software scandal and Danny Castellero's Octopus and the Iran-Contra affair? I mean, that's exactly what comes to mind. Yeah. So you know, within the context of Promise, the case management software, you know, okay, hell yeah, sloppy toppy. I'll check it out, brother. But yeah, you know, Promise allegedly case management software, which uh, obviously it provided a backdoor for intelligence and specifically Mossad and CIA at the time, and so understanding that that is kind of how the intelligence apparatus compromises digital assets. I think that's, you know, it's just a viable strategy that they pursue very often, I believe, and so also reminds me of wasn't it the San Bernardino terrorist attacks, right, where we were convinced that right these Islamists, these Muslims were just were acting within the, you know, the concept of just being Muslim and causing domestic terrorism in America. In reality, it very much seemed like it was one of those. First of all, it was a false flag, seemingly, when I think they had allegedly their goal was to shoot up a movie theater. I think was the. I'm going to have to look into that at a deeper level because I guarantee you there is so much more there in regard to the intelligence hidden hand, of course. And so just Musliming around. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, it seems like with in that context, I think the goal there was to right, wasn't it to provide the pretext to break into Apple's um if you remember, there was you know, Apple wasn't providing backdoor into their encrypted devices, and so basically that was what the San Bernardino false flag was attempting to achieve, was this precedent-setting notion of Apple being forced by the government and the intelligence community to provide that very backdoor and information in regard to, you know, these encrypted devices. And so again, it was another way to violate our privacy, you know, our rights, our constitutional rights to privacy, and and the companies that would allow for our constitutional rights to be upheld and exercised, you know. So I feel like it was another example of what could we achieve to kind of, again, further infringe upon these inherent rights, and that is the self-licking ice cream cone that is the state, obviously. But so Google also views Wiz deal as something that is in the best interest of America's national security. That's just so crazy to me. But understanding kind of the pivot to AI infrastructure, we're definitely witnessing something that is unprecedented. You know, you see Mark Andreessen and these individuals who go on these very large platforms and then also have a direct connection to the current administration, and they're promoting this vision, this AI overlord. Who can you hold accountable, right? Whenever your account gets shut down because you were anti-Semitic, and now you no longer, because you're on the dystopian everything app that is X, Twitter, um, right? Your social credit score takes a hit, and now you're debanked. What happens then? Are you still going to dissent? You know, and this is the threat, man. This is a dangerous place we're in. This environment is, man, it's once again, this is like just inherently dystopian in nature, this totalitarian vision. So, yeah, I believe that there's no way it's a coincidence. Of course, the $500 billion infrastructure deal for right, all these Silicon Valley giants that have somehow have the exact same rise to prominence, where their first and only contracts were directly involved with the CIA. Right? So it's like, man, when all of your assets come directly from the Pentagon's budget and black budget funds to that effect as well, man, what are we even talking about? But social credit scores come out, I'm debanked immediately. Yeah, exactly, sloppy toppy. We're all fucked, So that's what I'm concerned about. You see all these swattings and everything taking place, and all these influencers. At least some of them are authentic and are being targeted and swept up in that wide net being cast. But it's all a violation, right, of freedom of speech and our ability to hold the government accountable. And that's the goal, is to render us unable and incapable of you know of just pursuing that, what should be one of the most ethical, I would say, just the most important ethical core value in regard to understanding the dynamic between government and the state and the alleged free citizenry, which obviously this system doesn't offer liberty and prosperity. That's not at all in the context of this recipe, but we've been convinced that it is, and that's an achievement in and of itself. So yeah, learn to hunt and fish and survive, boys. 100%. Get out of the current system. We have to limit our dependence, as I've said before, right? Limit our dependence on the fascist system in order to insulate ourselves from the consequences. It's a permanent establishment, and I don't think the vast majority are able to even acknowledge this. So until that time comes, we're gonna have to look out for our own. I think that's basically the only choice we have. But so for of course, there's nothing dystopian in regard to this. Nah, this is all in America's national security interest. The acquisition is likely to test the Trump administration's antitrust appetite, which again feels precedent-setting to me. The all-cash deal would be Google's largest ever. Google has beefed up its cybersecurity muscle through acquisitions in recent years, buying Mandiant for $5.4 billion in 2022. Now, of course, you have big-name backers. The four co-founders met while working together in the IDF unit, where advanced cybersecurity meets cyber warfare. Get the fuck out of here. I mean, nah, man, this is all a coincidence, right? This wasn't by design. None of this was it's absolutely insane to me that we're witnessing, and yet people are just so much more focused on the culture war. These ridiculous narratives that, man, put us at odds. And it's which is inevitably that is the overall ultimate point of a lot of these false narratives. It's the purpose is division. And it's very well achieved at this point. So the quartet sold their first venture, cloud cybersecurity company Adalom, to Microsoft in 2015. Rappaport said in an interview last year with one of Wiz's board members that he knew their second would be a roller coaster. Wiz was initially called Beyond Networks and focused on network security. Rappaport and his co-founders pivoted to software that offers customers more cyber protection than their tech giant cloud providers might. That sounds like great messaging. It is backed by prominent Silicon Valley venture capitalists, including Sequoia Capital, Andreessen Horowitz, Index Ventures, Advent, and Green Oaks. So there you go. You get a direct connection to Peter Thiel instantly. They took a bold approach said Gilly Renan, Wiz board chair and founder of the VC firm CyberStarts. Their technology could identify vulnerabilities and identity issues faster and more effectively than anything else on the market. Today, Wiz's customers include several Fortune 100 customers. The startup's valuation swelled to $16 billion in an employee tender offer in late 2024. Bank of America advised Alphabet on the deal, and Goldman Sachs was Wiz's financial advisor. So there you go. We have, it looks like the cloud is potentially going to be, which of course it's probably been compromised from day one, I would imagine, just as the blockchain seems to have been potentially, if not, and obviously there was a strategy in place to compromise the blockchain if it wasn't in its infancy. But that's typical, right? I mean, that's so here we can kind of pivot to discuss a couple of additional notes here on of course the foreign policy updates, and then we'll have a brief conversation about the Delta project, and then we'll just have to get out of here probably. But tomorrow we'll oh, by the way, we're going to have Dana Duda. We're having her on to for Already Dead tomorrow, so that'll be a good time. As far as there's going to be a lot of discussion on the Process Church of the Final Judgment, so look forward to that. I think it'll be very important, as especially considering their impact and influence in just the really how often they resurface is as far as their pivotal influence in a lot of these scandalous historical cases of that really much seem to kind of, again, it's like not at all was I expecting to run across the Process Church in context to the Jeffrey McDonald case in the Fort Bragg murders, things of that nature. Like it's extraordinary how often their influence is revealed. And so again, I don't know why I would have been surprised due to the insane parallel directly attributed to the Manson murders, but still very strange, and it'll be a great conversation. So look forward to that one. But and on April 4th, I'm going to go on Monica Perez, as far as the Monica Perez show. She invited me to come on, so I'm very excited for that. Anytime I have the opportunity to have a conversation with Monica, I get very excited, right? So, but all right, so let's check this out, because I do think it's important for this update as far as foreign policy. You're seeing this Middle Eastern escalation in all of these various theaters of war that include not only Gaza, but Syria and Lebanon as well. Hey, thank you. Hey, say what now? Yeah, Monica's the best, man. I love her. Something about her and also Brad. Like when I discovered the propaganda report, it was years ago, and they were pivotal for me during COVID, just because they helped me very much feel like I was not alone, like many of the other people in this like-minded group of individuals that we kind of find ourselves in at this moment. But she specifically, she had a huge impact on me, and I have nothing but love and respect for her. So she's a brilliant mind and does phenomenal work. So, but yeah, I'll be going on her show April 4th. And beyond that, we did another Whatever This Is last night. Brad couldn't make it, unfortunately. It was super late, or I would have sent Jose the link as well, because we could have used his ass last night. That would have been fun, but definitely next time. So I think, but I knew he was working this morning as well. But anyway, so let's get into this, because once again, it's very important. But Israel, just a note on Gaza as well, because this is disturbing as hell. But Kyle Anzalone put out an article yesterday, and and basically was discussing how Israel established this new office. It's a newly established office that's dedicated to basically ethnic cleansing, right? Is the message here. And again, this is par for the course, man. Right? I mean, you had consider the I've been discussing recently the Israeli army chief, of course, who says 2025 is the year of war with Iran, talking about the green light as far as the greenlit genocide to restart, essentially, and then also I discovered yesterday that there was the Israeli envoy to Austria who suggested executing Gaza children in secret, right? In secret, as far as like it was a recording that was done covertly. Basically, he didn't know he was being recorded in this group meeting. But yeah, it seemed like a meeting for diplomacy for like various diplomats, and he's caught on this recording saying, that basically if you're 15 years old and if you ever even touch a gun, then you should be executed. So again, it's a very much a policy of targeting children in Gaza, which has been, that is status quo. But so yeah, let's read about this newly dedicated office, which is apparently removing Palestinians from Gaza. That's their dedication. That's their priority. So the Israeli Security Cabinet created a new office within the Defense Ministry that will work to remove all Palestinians from Gaza. Defense Minister Israel Katz said that Tel Aviv is moving forward with President Donald Trump's plan for Gaza, which you mentioned the escalation, then the wider regional conflict. I mean, these new demands for Iran to give up their entire civilian nuclear program, as well as, you have the supreme leader of Iran coming out and essentially saying that, he's threatening a response to any sort of attack that is conducted on behalf of U.S. Israeli interests, essentially. So the Times of Israel reported that the new office was established on Saturday night. A statement from Katz's office said the body will work to encourage what it called the voluntary departure of Palestinians from Gaza, and that he would be appointing the head of the agency in the coming days. The office will work to prepare for and enable safe and controlled passage of Gaza residents for their voluntary departure to third countries, including securing their movement, the statement explained, as well as coordinating the provision of infrastructure that will enable passage by land, sea, and air to the destination countries. It went on to argue that Tel Aviv's cleansing of Gaza is in line with Trump's vision. We are working with all means to implement the U.S. president's vision, and we will allow any Gaza resident who wants to move to a third state to do so. Trump has said that he wants to clean out and take over Gaza in order to create the Riviera of the Middle East. The president explained that the proposal would call for the permanent removal and resettlement of the Palestinians. On Friday, Katz said that Israeli forces would begin annexing Gaza. I have instructed the IDF to seize additional areas in Gaza while evacuating the population and to expand the security zones around Gaza for the protection of Israeli communities and IDF soldiers. One of the issues Tel Aviv and Washington face in cleansing Palestinians from Gaza is finding countries to take in the refugees. Many states have refused to accept Palestinians, believing the move would help Israel to expel Palestinians from their homeland. In recent weeks, reports have surfaced that the U.S. and Israel reached out to Somalia. That's interesting, because I'm pretty sure Somalia, we just bombed the shit out of Somalia. So again, it's like, hey, we'll send you into this entirely destabilized, war-torn, civil war environment, basically, and good luck, as if you won't be entirely targeted. Which, I mean, you just see what's happening in Syria. It is fascinating to witness. I mean, it's crazy to see that Jelani is basically, I think they're kind of exhausting his what he could provide them as far as the opportunity they have in this moment, they're basically exhausting this opportunity, and then they will utilize this mass chaos as a pretext to go back in and, you know, re-implement a new puppet. Although Jelani wasn't inherently their puppet to begin with, he's still a more jihadist. I would say he's more of a radical version than they would. I think that who knows how much you can actually control when it comes down to the operational level, that standpoint specifically. I'm sure when it comes down to it, you can direct, you know, a lot of these policies, but still, I think that Jolani is going to be exhausted and crucified, basically, and then removed, and a new puppet will be installed. Essentially, a new puppet regime, which will usually it always, you know, the context will become the new regime falls within the interests of the West, obviously, and so you have these geopolitical interests playing out again, and Syria is very prominent within this you know vision for the future moving forward with the permanent escalation in the area, and this I think it's necessary if as far as the implementation for the new world order framework, right, the globalist framework. I think that, you know, geopolitically, these specific areas are key as far as the interests are concerned, especially you consider what Israel truly is. I mean, it is the gateway. It's basically, I saw Tripoli put it in perfect terms the other day, actually. He said it's essentially a land bridge that, you know, providing, you know, trade routes, right? And it's basically the most convenient geopolitical asset you could imagine having in the global game of Risk, right? And if you've ever played Risk, then you kind of understand that's really the important significance, I think, of the geological area and geographical area in general, right? And so, yeah, there's a reason that area was specifically chosen, as well as the fact that I think that through the Zionist project, they imagined being able to exploit the spiritual aspect of this prophecy, right? And through manufacturing a false version of the very prophecy that many people, you know, expect and assume to play out in their lifetimes, you can significantly manipulate their minds, and as well as manufacture their consent in justifying a lot of these conflicts in those terms. You know, that it's divine prophecy and sanctioned by God, this genocide. And in reality, I think that the key state actors who have manufactured these policies and these very, you know, military conflicts playing out, you know, they're well aware of that leverage and how they could use it to exploit, you know, just public perception. And so the Riviera of the Middle East is upon us, and and really the genocidal intent is playing out, and so it's just I think it was I actually saw there's a reason that I named the episode Genocidal Intent, because Caitlin Johnstone, she wrote an article, and I thought it was brilliant, but it's a Medium article, and it paywalled really quickly. So I have I had to get it on my phone, and basically it claims that Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz has published an explicit statement of genocidal intent toward the people of Gaza, threatening civilians in the enclave with collective punishment in the form of total devastation if they do not find a way to overthrow Hamas and free all Israeli hostages. Katz's statement reads, "Residents of Gaza, this is your final warning. The first Sinwar destroyed Gaza, and the second Sinwar will bring upon it total ruin. The Israeli Air Force's attack against Hamas terrorists was only the first step. What follows will be far harsher, and you will bear the full cost. Evacuation of the population from combat zones will soon resume. If all Israeli hostages are not released and Hamas is not kicked out of Gaza, Israel will act with force you have not known before. Take the advice of the U.S. president. Return the hostages and kick out Hamas, then new options will open up for you, including relocation to other parts of the world for those who choose. The alternative is destruction and total devastation. My God. Yeah, so it looks like it's happening. It is happening, man. So the pivot to Iran is taking place. The genocidal intent is at in full, at full steam, man. So yeah, they talk tough, huh? These motherfuckers. They just this is our taxpayer dollars, right? So we're complicit. That's the worst part. But anyway, one of the issues Tel Aviv and Washington face in cleansing Palestinians. Let's see. On Friday, Katz said, by the way, that Israeli forces would begin annexing Gaza, as I said. And he says, I've instructed the IDF to seize additional areas in Gaza while evacuating the population and to expand the security zones around Gaza for the protection of Israeli communities and IDF soldiers. One of the issues Tel Aviv and Washington face in cleansing Palestinians from Gaza is finding countries to take in their refugees. Many states have refused to accept Palestinians, believing the move would help Israel to expel them, of course. The new Defense Military Office came about through joint planning between Katz and Israeli Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich. Smotrich recently explained that Israel could expel between 5,000 and 10,000 Palestinians from Gaza per day and would be able to fully cleanse the Strip in a year. He believes his vision is in line with Trump's. Israel broke a hostage and ceasefire deal brokered by Trump's Middle East envoy Steve Witkoff by cutting off all aid to Gaza at the beginning of March. Last week, Israel resumed large-scale bombing in the Strip, killing at least 500. 200 of the dead are children. However, the White House has endorsed the Israeli policy, with Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt saying on Thursday that Trump supports Israel's renewed military operations. Quote, the president made it very clear to Hamas that if they did not release all the hostages, there would be all hell to pay. Man, that is, again, this is all very, we predicted this essentially, which is even worse, to be honest, but understanding kind of, there's a, just realizing that there's more than just Gaza playing out in this very moment. There's an as I mentioned before, there's an escalation happening, very major, within Lebanon and Syria as well. And so you had what was it? There's, as far as the new resurgence of massacres, sectarian massacres playing out in Syria. I think it's important to recognize, because again, this will provide that pretext to, obviously step in and potentially regime change Jelani, which, as much as he's obviously our proxy, it's our jihadist Al Qaeda proxy is still, something that, I don't know. It's very obvious that they kind of, as I mentioned, they wring these opportunities dry in a way, right? They never let a good crisis go to waste. And so there are layered objectives being achieved throughout these, false narratives. So it looks as if these sectarian massacres have continued in as far as the past couple of days, and so the Cradle reported that the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, SOHR, on March 21st, they reported that it had documented the killing of 72 people across Syria over the past 24 hours in a series of bloody assassinations targeting both civilians and military personnel. The SOHR said that 58 were killed in the countryside regions of Tartoi and Latakia, noting that the assassinations were carried out by armed groups affiliated with the General Security and Syrian military factions. The Rights Monitor added that the remaining assassinations took place in the governorates of Aleppo, Dara, Deir ez-Zor, Damascus, and Homs without providing further information about who was responsible. So again, we're seeing an escalation in regard to these sectarian massacres, which then you see that Israel is essentially using this as a pretext to send more troops into Syria and also launch further airstrikes, which is very important, I think. And Israel continued its attacks on Syria over the weekend and sent more troops into the governorate near the occupied Golan Heights, and also launched multiple airstrikes against military sites in central Syria, including a military airport in Tadmur. The Tadmur strikes came early Saturday morning, targeting the Palmyra Air Base and a nearby military airfield. 2 members of Syria's military were reported wounded in the attacks. Tadmur was historically known as the ancient city of Palmyra, which is why some media reports referred to it as Tadmur Air Base. Later Saturday evening, Israel attacked military installations and officers' residences just south of Damascus in the suburb of Nadza. Damage was reported, but so far no official casualty figures are reported. Sunday, an additional attack was carried out against a bridge connecting Hosh al-Said Ali village to neighboring Lebanon. Here, I'll show you. I'll share this with you as well. But this attack is curious because it is in the same area where Syrian forces occupied the Lebanese side of the border briefly last week, but has seemingly no military relevance for Israel. This flurry of airstrikes is going on concurrently with the Israeli ground invasion into southern Syria, which began in December after the ouster of the Assad regime. Overnight, Friday into Saturday, a growing number of Israeli troops were reported seen in the area around Al-Rafid and Al-Asha. The troops are said to have come from a military outpost inside the occupied Golan Heights and were advancing along a dirt road on the Syrian side of the Alpha ceasefire line. Locals expressed concern about this, saying this convoy was a lot larger than previous ones and didn't simply stop at the usual locations inside Syrian territory before departing. Some termed it as the most extensive incursion into Syria in months. Israeli forces in smaller numbers have advanced much deeper into Syria than this, but the size of the force suggests that this may be different from the past incursions. Local disquiet is also growing because the new Syrian government is largely silent on this matter, and the international community has similarly offered only tepid opposition to the invasion. And remember, I brought up that video of the recent Sean Ryan and Sarah Adams podcast where they're legitimately pushing for and promoting regime change in Syria for Jelani. And they're using these sectarian massacres as the pretext, which this should have been expected considering Jelani's politics. I mean, why would we at all think that wouldn't be the case, especially how they operate in terms of jihadist Al-Qaeda proxy groups like Jelani's? I mean, I don't know why sectarian massacres wouldn't be the expectation. And so to me, it feels like it was always, this was, the deck was stacked. Obviously, this was a controlled, manufactured crisis for the purpose of problem, reaction, solution. And U.S. Envoy Steve Witkoff, he was even upbeat about the prospect of normalization between Israel and Syria diplomatically after Assad's ouster. Though Syria's government initially expressed hope for having Israel on relatively friendly terms, that appears impossible with them actively invading and occupying parts of Syria, an invasion that U.S. officials have broadly endorsed. And again, consider that how does, so in my mind, the sectarian massacres and the complete and utter chaos playing out in Syria very much provides kind of not only the it provides cover, first of all, for a lot of these advancements and escalations in the exact same area as far as Israel is concerned. And so, but it also kind of almost justifies a further escalation in the area. So all you would have to do is point to, well, look at the chaos happening due to the new regime in charge after Assad's removal. Well, something has to be done, right? And so maybe it can easily be justified and the consent can be achieved. And that's what obviously is taking place in my mind. So, but again, you're seeing a further escalation in Syria. And at the very same time, you're witnessing an escalation in Lebanon, which is absolutely insane. But when you understand that obviously Lebanon, Israel has invaded several times and invaded again in October 2024. But the invasion was a direct outgrowth of Israel's assault on the Gaza Strip and was ostensibly aimed against Hezbollah, was the alleged target, which was not seeking a new full-scale war with Israel, but did fire rockets at it out of solidarity with the Palestinians, if you remember. So a ceasefire agreement was reached in November, but Israel has been violating it with almost daily attacks, which we are well aware of. And but Israel also continues to occupy territory in Lebanon as in Syria, in which it's obligated to withdraw from, is another very important point. And as in Gaza, the Israeli attacks have been nominally aimed at a militant group. Apparently, this is again the claim from Responsible Statecraft. So, of course, the framework of this narrative isn't going to be entirely honest. But as far as yeah, it's so anyway, they claim that they're actually targeting the militant groups, but much and perhaps most of the resulting suffering has been inflicted on Lebanese civilians who already were enduring much hardship for reasons both related and unrelated. But there's an inherent contradiction in inflicting this kind of suffering on a population in the name of defeating or weakening Hezbollah. It's, again, I'm curious to know how many of these organizations and groups such as Hezbollah and the Houthis, I think the Houthis might actually be a little bit more of authentically and organically, galvanized group who are just kind of reacting to the tyranny and the oppression and the deliberate targeting. But who knows? I think so many of these organizations were created out of whole cloth. Like you can point to Hamas, that was essentially manufactured to divide the Palestinian Authority and create a pretext for basically tearing up the Abraham Accords. And that is something that I think, again, there's always, I think, the initial approach by the state is truly deception, and so I am looking for the manipulation at all times. And so anyway, it's there's no reason to expect that, Hezbollah. Thank you, brother. He says, I think you're right, Austin. I appreciate you, man. I just honestly, it's hard for me to distinguish between which of these groups are just being kind of put into the position where they're providing, that very justification necessary for the conflict to continue, which is another reason why you just see Netanyahu and the individual power players pointing to this ridiculous hostage negotiation as the crux of the conflict. Like, and that has nothing to do with this conflict, man. It's just a way that they can, again, it's a really a false justification, but that is what it is. And so anyway, with its boundless military attacks, Israel is seeking absolute security for itself, even at the price of absolute insecurity for everyone else it can reach. It rationalizes attacks with the mere possibility that someday someone might have the capability and the willingness to do something bad to Israel, while the attacks inflict immediate and certain suffering on someone else. In the case of the attacks on Syria, the Israeli objective is nothing less than the destruction of Syria's means to defend itself and exercise full sovereignty over its internationally recognized territory. I mean, man, talk about human costs, you know. This is the cost of Israel's right to defend itself, right? That's what they would have us believe. That is just, man, talk about false framework, you know, for understanding a conflict. But again, we're this in every theater of war on the world stage, we're witnessing major escalations, and so I think really we should probably kind of wind this down and get out of here at a certain point. I intended on talking about the Delta Project, but I don't know how much I want to actually do 3 hours today. It's going to definitely be a huge part. I'm going to inevitably disappear, I would think, for a few days toward the end of the week to finally go back into my dark crevice and fall down the rabbit hole and come out on the other end with a solo project worthwhile. And so that will definitely be taking place at some point this week, which unfortunately I have to figure out a better process. But I don't know. I have psychological issues, guys. But I will say that, no, man, it's just understanding this exception that is kind of, you know, Israel is the exception on the conservative aisle. It's really a part of what I saw Dave DeCamp mention in regard to the statement made by Glenn Greenwald the other day, which is, you know, it was in the context of Republicans supporting the right to protest unless it's against Israel. And yeah, what do you expect at this moment when we kind of suggested it at the beginning of the show, which is when you have these compromised assets in place, you know, you're only going to see this very dystopian agenda meeting their objectives at every turn. And the attempt all the while is to throw smoke and mirrors, right? Blow smoke and mirrors and manipulate our interpretation of the media cycle, right? Of the new political direction that we're apparently pursuing. And in reality, you know, if you pry just enough below the surface, an entire world of deception opens up to you, and you witness the reality for what it is. And man, no longer can you fall into that trap of manufactured consent. It's impossible, you know. And thank God for that. You know, like, man, I couldn't be more grateful that I've cultivated this ability to, at the very least, not fall into those. You know, what in my mind these are. You know, we're kind of heading in this preordained. You guys understand what I think about social engineering. We're in an environment oversaturated with social contagion, and man, just seeing the level of effect it has on everybody around you, right? Just anyone attempting to engage with reality, attempting to consume the media cycle at any level. And you witness this level of mind control that's been achieved. And you realize, like, that's why I feel so sympathetic toward a lot of these people, because I feel like they've been ideologically captured. They're in a prison, you know, and the walls of that prison are invisible only to them, you know. And yeah, that puts you in a very vulnerable position and leads to a very you know, yeah, there is an echo chamber for every delusion. Absolutely, Wise Elk 130. Yeah, you don't fall for manufactured consent. You lose all your friends and family. That's basically what happens. Absolutely. Oh man, what a GM, brother. That's hilarious. Global technocratic state incoming. Yeah, agreed, my friend. MK Ultra Mockingbird. Absolutely. Mind control on a global scale. Austin must troll under his deep dark conspiracy bridge to farm his ripe and stinky punch. What the fuck? Daniel McLaughlin, you're too good, brother. I appreciate you, PG. Thank you, my friend. Let's see. He says your homies were saying the horrible effects on your brain the Dutroux affair had on your brain. We're all there, man. MK Ultra world. We're all initiated. Yeah. Yeah. Agreed, my friend. I'm yeah, I'll never forget Dutroux. I just once you're exposed to such a level of depravity, it kind of opens your eyes to what is real, what exists out there, the threat that you have to is really being posed that you have to defend against, whether you're aware of it or not. You know, it's there, and that's why I felt like it was my duty and obligation before I had my first child to attempt to understand and conceptualize what I need to defend. What I need to at least acknowledge as being aware of, in order to potentially create that defense mechanism to psychologically insulate myself and my family from that level of manipulation. That's what my goal is still to this day. And so anyway, I guess I probably should just shut up on it, honestly, at this point, because I would go on for another hour and a half if we started talking about the Delta Project, which was a huge part of what I was intending on covering today. But it's okay. You don't always get to all the points you were hoping to make. But yeah, you guys already know. Like, oh, and by the way, I saw this video of this lesbian doctor in Missouri, and she's like, it blew my mind because she apparently she said she's been married to this trans person for 13 years. She thought that she was potentially, the way that she put it was that she thought she was saving trans children, but she inevitably claims that now she realizes that she was actually harming them with this gender affirming policy, and physically harming them, which I found very interesting. And the claim was I was saving trans kids, now I'm blowing the whistle. And it's really insane because when I realize that she's essentially saying that through the process in place, this very moment of inverting the vaginal cavity into, or inverting the penis into a vaginal cavity, or whatever the process is now for the medical process for going through the gender affirming transitionary care. It's legitimately, and this is all coming from this Missouri bill that was the claim is, right, Missouri trans genocide, which is just the craziest. It's the craziest concept. But yeah, they're claiming that essentially through this process, and she says that she's now blowing the whistle because she personally witnessed this phenomena of what she called a social contagion, leading these, what she thought at first she was, genuinely morally in line with this policy, and then throughout the process she viewed it as morally and medically appalling. And she witnessed how young children were coming into her clinic, and basically they were all coming, and her clinic, apparently, according to her, they had a term specifically. There was terminology for this phenomena, which they called like the TikTok trigger, something like that. I can't remember. And basically, these young children would come in with this gender identity crisis, in the midst of, apparently, and they would all come in with this almost verbatim script that was from TikTok videos influencing, their mindset in regard to this sort of gender fluidity and things of that nature. And so over the course of time, this lesbian doctor witnesses how the gender affirming policies in place, she claimed they're homophobic and actually are you know what's the word, it's obviously like they have really kind of negative intentions and evil intentions behind targeting the LGBTQ community in this fashion is kind of the way that they put it into context, which I understand that interpretation. It might actually be the case. Hey, like convince you to, you know, to destroy your own body, which is very much what it seems like has been, a part of this just this really just has been a social contagion, right? As far as the trans issue, but it's interesting to realize that apparently these children were coming into her practice, and they were all coming in due to this verbatim script that again they mentioned as some TikTok trigger of some kind, and her ultimate conclusion was this was all due to a social contagion in the age group of these individuals just being, vulnerable to obvious, public pressure and so it was interesting to say the least that she took it a step further and described how, unfortunately, through this process, a lot of these young people who transition will inevitably it they will they will unfortunately there will be infections that take place, right, in regard to, let's say, as I mentioned before, the inverted penis into a vaginal cavity. Well, then they have their first sexual experience and their vaginas are blowing out, and basically there's also been examples of infections taking place, them coming into obviously receive medical treatment, and then the infection escalating into an actual unfortunate death, which apparently that is taking place as well, right? So a lot of these gender transitionary surgeries are inevitably resulting in actual death in regard to these unfortunate infections that take place, which of course it would. I mean, that makes a lot of sense to me, but anyway, at some point I'll have to find those videos and bring them to the table, because I'll be honest, it was tragic as hell. It was one of the saddest videos I've watched. Just imagining, the unfortunate targeting of the vulnerable minds of the youth in this moment. You know, it's hard to be young as it is, to actually be put into that position, and not only put into that position by um state officials and care providers, right? You're being put in that position by your own parents who are ideologically captured into this just ridiculous um socially engineered contagion, as she put it, which was really the perfect explanation. So yeah, social contagion leads to mass formation, 100%. And what happens when you're in that death cycle, and the first thing that happens when you pursue this, you know, this gender transitionary surgery and things of that nature, I mean, you become entirely, I mean, you're for the rest of your life, right? You're now you have no option. You're directly tied into the medical system, the health system. Like, you are now a lifelong, right? You're in that lifelong cycle of a revolving door. You will not be able to break free from big pharma or this sort of, you know, it's just, again, it's another trap that's been very well laid and sophisticated in many ways. And so It's unfortunate, but it was something that just came to mind because I had realized that I forgot to mention this fact that this Missouri doctor was pursuing a bill prohibiting the transition of children, which I do think is, as much as I'm philosophically opposed to the state, it's just insane that you would even have to take that precautionary measure where you would have to implement legislation to get you from castrating your child. Yeah, castrated, no kids, no life. Yeah, 100%. Fully reliant on the medical system and big pharma for the rest of your life. There's no breaking out of that. And why would you want to, compromise yourself, put yourself into such a unfortunate position? Yeah, it just makes no sense. But when it's due to a lack of identity, that's what is really taking place. I think so many people are struggling with this. They have no passion in their lives. They're not pursuing something worthwhile. They feel this God hole within them. They can't seem to, have this, just to feel, spiritually fulfilled, and when that's not happening, you're a dangerous person. Not only to others, but yourself and people you love. And yeah, that's what social engineering, that is the result, and so anyway, I'm out of here, guys. I got nothing but love for you. We'll talk about the Delta Project another day, but I hope you guys are having a good morning. I hope you're having a good Monday. We'll definitely catch back up tomorrow and have some more conversations about man, honestly, I'm very excited to talk about the process because I know Dana has done such just extraordinary work kind of tracing these groups that overlap with, and then also to current day, you're seeing like the Best Friend Society. I'm so interested to ask her a few questions, see it, and kind of pick her brain in regard to that subject. So check it out. And yeah, it's my mom. What's up, Mom? I love you. Hey, say what now? Appreciate you, brother. Thank you, JMS. I appreciate you, brother. Jesus loves you too, my friend. I appreciate you, Wise Elk. Thank you, brother. Gerald, you're my brother. You know this. All right, guys. I'm out of here. Nothing but love. Have a wonderful day, and we'll definitely catch up tomorrow. Oh, yeah. By the way, forgot I gotta promote my stuff. I never promote my shit. So patreon.com/the underclass podcast. Definitely there's incentive there as far as whatever this is, episode 7. Yeah, I'm gonna drop that one today. It'll be published as well. If you guys appreciate this, obviously like, share, and subscribe, and comment as well. But I'm always interested to hear from you. And yeah, send me stuff too, guys. Like anything that you might think is interesting and would be worthwhile to bring to the table. I will definitely do so. But anyway, guys, nothing but love. Have a wonderful Monday. I'll catch you tomorrow.